be really clear, really clear. There can't be any ambiguity about the range of the airplane. If you're flying to Honolulu and you land short, that's a real not good. So everybody's got to be really clear about the performance goals. And there's got to be one plan. And I know you've all have experience with this, but in any organization, there's always lots of plans. So creating clarity around the plan, over communicating the clarity, and also reinforcing the clarity is really, really important so that everybody knows how it's going. Facts and data, as we talked about, really, really important. If you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's red or yellow, then you can't manage a secret. So it's got to be accountable, but also very, very safe to be able to share how it is. The next one is something that I've noticed a lot of people struggle with, because information is considered to be an asset sometimes by a lot of people. And the really successful organizations are the ones that really believe that everyone needs to know the plan, needs to know the status against the plan, and the areas that need special attention. And I don't know about you, but there are a lot of organizations where there are a few people that know certain things, but everybody doesn't know everything. And in this world of transparency and information is ubiquitous, everybody knows anyway. So it's really important that everybody does really know. Positive attitude, propose a plan, find a way, attitude, it's just so important. These things only get done because you have the hearts and minds and all the talent of everybody participating. Respect is really important, listening to each other, seeking to understand before you seek to be understood, and also appreciating each other and good work. Emotional resilience, go right back up to the top. It's all about people working together, because things are going to happen because you're creating these fantastic vehicles. And trust this process and just keep going around and around and around it. And of course, it is so much fun to design a commercial airplane. So everybody ought to be enjoying it, and we ought to be enjoying the journey of doing it, plus each other. Okay, so that's my presentation. That's all I've learned. Okay, now I'll tell you a little bit more. So I was then asked to serve as the president and the CEO of Boeing Commercial Airplanes. And what I really knew after all those years on the programs were these working together principles and practices. So I didn't make one change to these principles and practices as the CEO of Boeing, and they're all exactly the same. And the one really clear performance goal in business, as you know, is profitably growing for the good of all the stakeholders. And so that was a really important part that we clarified on the vision and the strategy. Also, then I was asked to integrate McDonnell Douglas Corporation and Rockwell with all of Boeing's defense and space assets at the end of the Cold War, because we needed to rationalize all of our capability throughout the United States. And so I used the very same principles and practices, because we had three of everything: fighters and bombers and satellites and launch vehicles and tankers. And so we used the very same principles and practices to bring these three fantastic companies together to create the nation's finest defense and space company. And things are going pretty well, and it was really fun. And I never thought I was going to leave Boeing. And I had one more airplane that I wanted to contribute to, and that was a replacement for the 737, which is the most popular airplane in the world. And when you look at all of the Boeing airplanes today, 75% of all the seats that are flying worldwide are on a Boeing airplane. So if it's not a Boeing, you shouldn't be going. And then I got a call from Bill Ford. And I kept thinking, Bill Ford, the great-grandson of Henry Ford? And as we all know, Henry Ford changed the world. 113-year-old company, committed to safe and efficient transportation. Just a fantastic contribution to economic development, energy independence and security, and environmental sustainability. And I knew I was in trouble as Bill was explaining the situation at Ford, because I didn't say no right away. And I was just so interested in this fabulous global and American icon that I just wanted to learn everything I could about it. And the more that he shared with me, and Bill's just this fabulous person and leader, the more grim it became. And I still couldn't say no. And so I started doing my due diligence, and this is what I found. First of all, a 113-year-old company, tremendous technical base, continuous improvement, continuous innovation. And they had become a house of brands. So they had purchased Aston Martin, Jaguar, Land Rover, Volvo, Mazda, in addition to Ford. And because they couldn't figure out how to make money on Ford, so they thought, if we have all of these brands, then maybe we can deliver, profitable growth for all the stakeholders. And you can imagine how complex that was. Also, Ford had become very regionalized, and Henry Ford set Ford up originally to operate in every country around the world in where we sold vehicles, because he wanted to be part of the economic fabric and provide great jobs and great careers. And he was so far ahead of his time, and he still is, because most of our competitors today are mercantilists. They have no natural resources. They have to bring resources in. They have to create something of value. They have to export it and bring the wealth back to their countries to be able to survive. And here was Ford, a fantastic global company, but completely separate business units around the world, different marketing plans, different product plans, different technology plans. And there's no way we were going to compete with global powerhouses like VW and Toyota and Hyundai now. So also the world was changing. Fuel economy, emissions, sustainability were becoming more important in the purchase decision by the consumers. They wanted a complete product line. They wanted small vehicles all the way up, like from a Fiesta all the way up to an F-Series truck. And they wanted all the quality and the fuel efficiency and safety that you'd normally get in a larger, more expensive vehicle. They wanted that in every size vehicle because they were making a lifestyle decision on how they wanted to operate with their vehicle, but they wanted it all. Ford was losing market share because we would really, in the United States, had focused on larger vehicles, SUVs and trucks. And if you wanted an SUV or an Explorer or an F-Series or a Mustang, there's only one place you went, and that was Ford. They were the finest vehicles in the world. But we didn't have a complete family in the United States, although we had a lot of the smaller size vehicles around the world. So we were losing share in the United States. Our quality, fuel efficiency, and safety, the things that people really value and affordability, we were kind of competitive, but we weren't leading. And that's so either leading in the automobile industry or you're not, and it's really hard to sustainably grow if you're not. So we kind of were a fast follower and not taking the risks that we needed to. Also, the automobile industry in the United States especially had nearly 40% overcapacity. And the cost structure was not competitive because of the agreements that the GM and Chrysler and Ford had made with the unions over the years. So we were actually moving all the production outside the United States, which is what we should do to create value. But it was sad. And also, we were losing money on every brand and every vehicle. And the first forecast that I saw that Bill shared with me and this is in September, for the full year was a $17 billion loss. And 4 months later, we achieved it. So this was not a forecast accuracy issue. We needed a different vision, a strategy, and plan. So you were probably wondering, like I was wondering, why did I say yes? Why would I leave Boeing and go to Ford that was in this situation? And the reason is that I love engineering and I love manufacturing and I love being part of talented teams that make a huge difference to deliver safe and efficient transportation around the world. And I also believe in the United States of America. And we had kind of moving away from manufacturing. 70% of all the research and development in the United States today and around the world is associated with manufacturing with a big M, including the technology, the engineering, and the manufacturing. And we were walking away from that. We thought we could somehow just not have that as our base. And no country has ever been as strong and sustainable without a strong manufacturing base. And so I decided that I was being asked to serve a second American and global icon, and that's why I decided to go. So I arrive in Detroit at the airport and accept the position. We haven't announced it to anybody yet. And the Ford people picked me up in a Land Rover. And I go, okay, let's see, a note to self. I just left those beautiful logos, the Boeing company, and I'm going to Ford, and they just picked me up in a Land Rover. So note to self. Then we drive from the Detroit airport to Dearborn, and Dearborn is where Henry Ford was born, and it's just beautiful. It's about 25 miles west of Detroit. It's just beautiful country. And Henry really got into this to help make the lives better for the people at the time. It's just a beautiful place. There's homes there. And here's the world headquarters of the Ford Motor Company. And 350,000 employees around the world, $140 billion company. And they call it the glass house. And it's all glass on the outside. And it has 12 stories. And I had done all my research. I knew what it looked like. And I'm going, whoa, from my Land Rover viewpoint. And so we drive into the garage where all the executives are for the company. And it goes down into the basement, and the doors open, and we drive in, and there's not one Ford vehicle in the garage. There are Aston Martins, Jaguars, Land Rovers, Volvos, no Ford vehicles. Second note to self, I wonder what everybody's working on here. I don't think it's Ford. So then Bill greased me, and we go up, and we walk into the auditorium at Ford, and it seats about 400 people, and it's completely full of all the journalists. And then there are another 1,200 journalists that are online, because the automobile industry worldwide is like 15 to 18% of the GDP worldwide. And so everybody's really interested in this change, this new CEO that Ford is announcing. And so they just started asking me question after question. I just got there, what was I going to do? What was the strategy going to be? And why did I come? And then one journalist said, well, Mr. Mullally, with all due respect, the automobile business is very complicated, starting with the products. And you don't know anything about it, with all due respect. And I said, I'm a customer in person, so I said, do you have a question? They said, well, yes. My question is, and it's on all of our minds, is it's so complicated and sophisticated and you don't know anything about it. What does it mean to us that you're here? Are we going to be okay? And so I rubbed my chin very thoughtfully, and I said, well, I really do agree with you. The vehicles are very sophisticated, and the industry is very sophisticated and complicated. Matter of fact, the average car or truck has around 10,000 parts. And you think about the system engineering and the quality and the fuel efficiency and the emissions and the safety, the aerodynamics, very sophisticated vehicles. I might point out that the 777 airplane has 4 million parts, and it stays in the air. And the next day, 3-inch headlines in the Detroit News. I think we got the right guy. They're kind of hurting for news at the time. And then my other favorite question was, there are a lot of good questions, but my other favorite one was, one of the journalists raised their hand and said, so Mr. Mullally, with all due respect, we have all noticed that the color of your slacks don't match the color of your coat. Well, now we're getting down to it. And so I, again, being a customer in person, I said, do you have a question? And they said, yes, we all want to make sure that you know that the automobile industry is a very buttoned up place. And lots of cufflinks, starched shirts, really nice suits. And again, being a customer in person, I said, so do you have a question? And the journalist said, well, what we'd like to know is it going to be okay tomorrow in the world headquarters of the Ford Motor Company to wear a sport coat and slacks? So I rubbed my chin again, and very decisively, I said, yes. Next day, 3-inch headlines in the Detroit News. The culture change at Ford has already begun. Okay, so that was my introduction. That was my introduction to Ford. And you can kind of see what that meant from a culture point of view that we had to break through. So, did the same plan. We included everybody on the team. Only a few people reported to Bill at the time. So I selected business unit leaders for every region around the world, Asia Pacific, Europe, Russia, North and South America. Put together a real simple matrix organization so we could work both the revenue side and the efficiency side. So clear businesses that are facing the consumer, and then skill teams that go across the world, like engineering, manufacturing, procurement, HR, communications, and selected all those leaders. And so now, this is the first time they've all been together in a room. And I shared with them our management system. I shared this very same chart, everybody a copy of it. We talked about what it meant, so I could ask questions and stuff. And then I shared with them how we were going to manage the place, which is the only way I'm going to do it, is we're going to come together around a compelling vision, a comprehensive strategy for our company, and we're going to do it together, everybody, not just a few of us. We're all going to do it together. And then we're going to start the relentless implementation plan to meet every Thursday. And each one of us will have our few charts that summarize our contribution to the plan. We're going to go 5 years out, because if we discount that back, that's 85% of the value. And we'll always be thinking long-term in addition to short-term. And then we'll status our plan, how it's going. Then I introduced them to color coding. And so if you're on plan, you just have your chart be green, put a little green. And if you have an issue, but you got it kind of in work, yellow. And if something has just happened and you're way off the plan now, and you're not sure what you're going to do yet, then just make it red. Well, they had no idea what to do with yellow and red. And nobody in Ford ever was red. Because it was Ford, like most companies, this was the destructive management philosophy of all time. That is, you only bring a problem to your boss if you have a solution. So that means you're managing a secret. You have no idea what's going on. And so no one brought up an issue unless they had a solution. And so, they were managing a secret. They had no idea why it was going the way it was going. And so we came together around a vision. We found our original vision of Henry Ford, January 24th, 1925. You can Google it. It's so cool. In the Saturday Evening Post, and only the wealthy had cars at the time, and he wanted to open the highways to all mankind. And he laid out the entire strategy for doing it. It'd have to be large in scale. You have to manage all the resources. You have to have a continuous improvement philosophy. And it'd have to be dedicated on making lives easier and more worthwhile for everybody. And at the time, he had 50% market share worldwide. And the last sentence says he doesn't look at success. He looks at success as a base for being able to serve all mankind with safe and efficient transportation. Well, that worked for all of us. That was the coolest thing we ever read, and we could all get up in the morning to contribute to that. Then we also agreed on the strategy, which was so, you can imagine, was so different than the strategy that had gotten us this place. So we agreed to divest all the brands except Ford as fast as we could. And remember, we needed the money also because we were going to lose $17 billion. And they knew that now for the first time too, because they had the chief financial officer actually share it. So it was the first time they all knew they were going to lose $17 billion. We also agreed that we are going to have a complete family of vehicles available for everybody around the world, from a Fiesta size all the way up to an F-Series, and that every new vehicle that we designed and produced would be best in class in terms of what the consumers really want and they value. And that is quality, fuel efficiency, safety, really smart connected design, and also affordable vehicles. We also agreed that we are going to operate as one company, and that's the reason we had the matrix organization. We're all going to do it together. We changed all the compensation system to be around one Ford stock price with a multiplying factor about your performance, so that everybody around the world was incentivized to work together. We also agreed that we need to restructure the business really fast, because we're going to lose $17 billion, and we had 100% overcapacity of everything: facilities, computing, people. Remember, this is all before the financial crisis. We also agreed that we're going to work together as one team, and we also spelled out the expected behaviors, as you see here, how we're going to operate, about the transparency and helping each other, and we laid out those expected behaviors, and we're going to help each other further develop those. And I I think those are the major ones. And of course, that is a completely different company than what we were starting with. So we agreed on that. We started to go to work. We had our business plan review meeting. We had 4 other meetings that any issue that came up, we knew could get on that agenda, everything about strategy, another one about product, another one about process improvement, another one about people. And we'd all do that together. And we've done that for 9 years. So we started the business plan review, and everybody's putting together their charts. And the first business plan review, it took 2 days because they just wanted to talk to each other and tell each other what was going on, as opposed to summarizing, here's the plan, here's the status against the plan, here's the areas that need special attention, so everybody knows, and then we'll work it in these subsequent meetings. And so we worked on it and got it down to 2.5 hours. And everybody around the world, everybody on the team. And so it was going pretty well, and except we had about 320 charts for all of the team members, and they were all green. And they know, and I know, because we shared with them, that we're going to lose $17 billion. So I stopped the meeting, and I said, team, we're going to lose $17 billion. Is there anything that's not going well? We have the whole team here. We know everything. And they do know everything. I mean, Ford's always attracted the best and brightest, the whiz kids, McNamara, unbelievable talent. There's 25 applicants for every position. Is there anything that's not going well? Eye contact down to the floor. I thought, oh my, this is going to be a defining moment, because if we can't break through that, it doesn't make any difference. We won't be able to deal with all the things we have to deal with. So the next week, everything's green, and next week it's all green. And I'm going, oh my. And then I didn't know this until I read the book American Icon by Bryce Hoffman, and we had all these journalists who wanted to write the story in the universities about Ford, and we gave it to Bryce to write because we trusted him. He's really knowledgeable, and he wrote this book, and it's so interesting because the style, it's like reading The Godfather, just one thing after another. Matter of fact, he sent me a copy ahead of time. We didn't have any editorial rights or financial interest, but I couldn't put it down. I started reading this book, and I'm not like a late night person, and it got to be about 11 o'clock, and my wife of 45 years said, Alan, what are you reading? I said, I'm reading this book about the transformation of Ford. And she said, Alan, it's late. Go to bed. You know how this turned out. Okay, so in this book, it's described in this meeting that I didn't know about. And Mark Fields, who was leading the Americas, they ran into a lift actuator issue on the tailgate of the new Ford Edge in Oakville, Canada. And so he stopped production because we said we were only delivering the finest quality compared to all of our competitors. And so he stopped production. When you stop production of an automobile line, they stack up really fast. And so he had like 5,000 edges out in the tundra. And so he's in his business plan review on Wednesday before the Thursday morning when he comes in and shares this with everybody. And up comes the launch chart. On every launch, we're usually launching 40 to 50 vehicles a year. There are 3 columns, one for technical readiness, one for schedule readiness, and one for financial impact for that new vehicle launch. And up comes this launch chart for the Edge, and it's green, green, and green. And Mark's just stopped production. And you can imagine what that meant technically, schedule-wise, and finances. So Mark says, this is in the book, so Mark said, so this looks like one of those red things Alan's talking about. And somebody on the team says to Mark, well, what's your point? Well, I think what he's saying is that we're all in this together. We need everybody helping, and we have to have the courage to share what the real situation is, even though we don't know the answer yet. And then somebody else says, so what color do you want us to make it, Mark? And he said, well, I think we should make it red. And then somebody else says, nice knowing you, Mark. Best of luck. And remember, they'd seen this behavior in the past, so they were really concerned. So it was nice knowing Mark. And so We start the business plan review the next day, and green, 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 and up comes Mark with his red. And I mean silence. It was a sucking sound. The air was leaving the room. And everybody's looking down, and they're looking at me at the same time. And so I started to clap. And subsequently, they told me they knew that was a sign. The 2 large doors were going to open behind me. 2 large people were going to come in and extract Mark out of here. And so the doors didn't open, and Mark shared what the situation was, and I said, thank you. That is great visibility. What can we do to help you? Is there anything we can do to help you? And Derek Kuzak was running engineering and said, I think I've seen that on such and such a vehicle. I'll get you that data right away. Joe Henricks, who's running manufacturing worldwide, we're going to figure this out, and we're going to need some manufacturing engineers, and we'll get them up to Oakville, Canada, to be ready to go switch out the parts and get the production going again. That interchange took 6 or 7 seconds. We went on to the next green chart, next green, 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 green. Next week, he was the only red chart, but Mark was still there. Everybody noticed that. Next week, he was still red, but Mark was still there. And he's sitting right next to me. And so they couldn't figure this out. And the next week, they found a solution. We're working with a supplier. It turned to yellow, and Mark was still there. And the next week, it turned to green, and the vehicle started flowing all around the world. And Mark was still there. What do you think the color looked like? The charts looked like 320 charts the following week. Not all red. I heard somebody say all red. It is $17 billion. But they look like a rainbow. And I knew then that everything was going to be okay. Because if we could create that culture and a culture that we're going to help each other in addition to the transparency and the honesty, that no matter what came at us, and we did this very same thing when we got caught in a tsunami in Asia, and we had 50% of our Asia-Pacific resources underwater. Same thing with the financial crisis. Everything did the very same way. We just moved the business plan review up to being more frequent to deal with this rapidly changing world. Okay, so how did it turn out? It turned out fantastic, and I'm most in awe probably of anybody. When you look at all the stakeholders, starting with the customer, we are the #1 brand now in the United States. We're increasing market share every year. We're the #1, #2 brand in all the European countries. We're the #1 brand in Russia and growing. We're their fastest growing brand in China. We have the #1, #3, and #6 vehicle in the world with the Focus, the Fusion, and the F-Series. So the consumers love the Ford brand. We also have had the biggest improvement in corporate brand image of any large corporation ever in history over the last 7 years. When you look at it from the store owner's point of view, they're the most profitable they've ever been, and they even helped us with the restructuring of the whole supply chain to get back to matching our production to the real demand. Their dealerships are the most profitable they've ever been. The investors in Ford, the intraday low on Ford stock was $1.01, and it's appreciated approximately 1,837%. So every day I get the coolest letters from people around the world that have invested, and it's helped make their life really worthwhile. Probably one of the things I'm most happy for Ford are all the employees. And we use the Mayflower Group for our employee survey, and I'm sure you guys are using a lot of these because it's really important what the employees think. And remember, the really key index in there is the % positive of how your employees feel about your company and your leadership, and do they understand the strategy, and do they feel like they're making a contribution, and are they valued for doing that? And I always work really hard on this because I really believe in people working together. And at Boeing, I think I got up to 65%. The average % positive across the United States is 46%, which means that 54% are just working for a salary, but they're not building a cathedral. 46%. And so I was very proud of that at Boeing. And guess what it is at Ford? 89%. 89% of the employees know where the company's going. They understand it. They believe in it. They're contributing, and they feel appreciated. So That's my report to the committee. Susan, thank you. And I'd be glad to take your questions. And if we have roving mics, which is great. And so all you do is raise your hand. And I'd love to know, just introduce yourself and where you are. And if we could turn up the house lights so I can see you a little bit better, would be great. Or not. Can we turn up the house lights? Because I cannot see you if you don't turn them up. And I'd love to see you. I know they can do this. Okay, so I cannot see you yet. So whoever has a microphone.
Dave. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm Dave Edwards with Premier. Thank you for a great presentation. Thank you for your humility and just the way you tell that story. And even though you ran two very different businesses than the one we're in, I think you found connection points with this whole audience. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm curious about two things. One is, how do you drive a culture of innovation, especially when you're under financial stress, as you were specifically at Ford? How do you spark and incubate the best ideas, knowing by definition some of those ideas might fail and might be costly? And then the second question is related to the collaborative spirit. Beyond the internal collaboration with your own employees, what kind of a culture did you build around collaborating with suppliers? It sounds like on the Edge story, that was a partnership with one of your key suppliers. So I'd love to have you opine on those two things.
I think what I've found on all these programs and getting a chance to serve leading Boeing and Ford, the most important thing is the compelling vision and then a strategy for achieving it and everybody knowing it. I was, just to be with your team today and listen to Susan and your team earlier, I mean, your mission is to improve the quality and the productivity of healthcare in the United States. I mean, that's worth getting up for. And then how clear the strategy was for doing that, and your business model where you're actually collaborating from the inside out, not waiting for all the bureaucrats to give you more and more laws. I mean, that's really compelling. That's very exciting. And so I've found that the more that everybody knows that and knows where you are on it, that it just unleashes all the talent, the technical talent, the emotional talent. But if they don't know what the vision and the strategy is, and they don't know what the plan is, and they don't know what the status against the plan, then they're managing a secret too. They can't get excited about it, and they don't know where all their talents are going to fit in. Can you put the slide back up again? Okay, thanks. And can you make the really bright lights in the back go away? Now we're talking. You think I have magical powers, don't you? Okay, so here's a real test, because you're going to end up thinking about this, because that's what you asked about. Everyone knows the plan, the status, and the areas that need special attention. Do you believe that?
Yeah. But
you
do it here?
Okay. So you have to decide whether you believe that or not, right?
Right.
I'll tell you one little story. So every day in the Detroit News, when I arrived, there'd be a horrible story about Ford, because they're covering Ford. And I'd take it to the leadership team, and I'd say, it was on the factory floor, it was harassment, it was engineering, it was manufacturing. I mean, we were losing $17 billion. And I'd say to the team, is this story true? And every time they'd say, yes, that's a true story. I said, well, how does newspaper journalists get this? And they'd say, well, it must be our scuzzy employees. They must call or something and tell them the story. So what do you think we ought to do about it? Well, we should ask our IT partner here to find who they are and hang a couple of them upside down on the flagpole, and then they'll stop this. I said, really? This is not going very well. So I couldn't stand it. So I called up, and it happened to be Bryce, because Bryce was writing about Ford. And I said, and here's the president and CEO calling up a newspaper. And he says, yes. I said, Bryce, I just have a question for you about the articles you're writing. Miss Malai, they're true. That's not why I'm calling, Bryce. You know why I'm here. I'm here to help save this great company, and I need to understand these things at the most fundamental level. So how do you get these articles? And he said, well, I just push my answering machine in the morning and at night. And on top of that, on the answering machine, the employee that's calling in on the issue leaves their name and their telephone number, so that if I have any questions for clarification, I can give them a call. Because they want the story to be accurate. Now I know I was onto something. So I said, so, Bryce, why do you think they're calling you and sharing with you these stories? And he didn't say anything. I said, Bryce, you have to trust me. I have to know. He said, okay. They're calling because they're scared to death. They didn't know the $17 billion number, but they knew we're in trouble because everybody knows everything. And so obviously the leadership of the company doesn't know, or they'd be doing something. So this is their last resort. Their last resort was to do something that they just hated and call a newspaper and tell them what was going on. Isn't that something? Amazing. Because they care so much. There are 3 and 4 generations that have worked here. So I said, thank you very much. And then I was even more motivated to accelerate the working together at Ford. And so the charts turned like a rainbow. And within a couple of months after that, there are no more articles in the Detroit News. So rather than ask my team, again, why there were not, so I called up Bryce and I said, Bryce, there are no more articles in the Detroit News about Ford. He said, there are no more articles, Alan, because there's nothing on my answering machine.
Wow.
Is that good?
Wow, that's awesome.
I mean, think about it. But every one of these principles, if you choose to entertain them, you have to believe it.
Right.
And then you have to do it. And I know leadership teams, they get ready for the earnings call, and they don't even share the financial numbers with their senior team. They're insiders. Well, what if they call the newspaper or something? You're going to present it to the SEC. It has to fairly present. You can't go wrong. And I imagine you wouldn't tolerate that very often. Right. So every one of these things, the first thing to do is to start with your heart. And do you really believe it? Because you can't fake it, and you actually have to act on it. Right. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for that answer. And I'm Ron Paulus from Asheville, North Carolina with Mission Health. Building on that same sort of thematic, I know many of us struggle, and certainly we do, with how you get all of the messaging, and I don't mean that in the sense of it's preconditioned, but the buy-in that you described about the 89% of Ford employees who view themselves as being engaged, know where it's going, et cetera, et cetera. Would you share with us any additional information about, getting that last mile to the frontline staff?
Sure.
You had a very complex circumstance with global production, et cetera. Thank you very much.
Just be relentless about creating clarity about the plan. Everything on there. What is the plan? Every day, in every meeting you're in, what is the plan? And you have to say that. And most leaders don't know how to say that. They think they're supposed to know the plan. They're supposed to have things to share and tell everybody what to do every day. So just keep asking yourself, what is the plan? What's the strategy and what's the plan? Just like I was watching Susan and the team this morning. And then keep going deeper and deeper, and then share it with everybody. Every vehicle you can think of. The town halls, those business plan reviews every Thursday. We invite guests to the business plan review. Can you imagine the leadership team? Why would I invite guests from the factory floor, from engineering, manufacturing? They sit all around the room. They can see on the TVs all the team all around the world. We're going through the business plan review, the team is, in 2.5 hours, 320 charts, status in it, the red, yellows, and greens. And there are guests all around there, and there's guests around every location around the world, in Shanghai and Sydney. And why would you have guests? Why would I invite guests? Because if you have guests watching you work, then all this destructive behavior goes away. Same reason we thought maybe it might be nice to have glass, on the outside of the offices. So you wouldn't be closing your door and beating people up and stuff. And so you have guests watching you work, and all of a sudden, well, that's a great idea, Jim. Because you start working together instead of this going after each other and all this destructive behavior. And then whatever was shared there goes all the way down to 320 employees. It comes back up because that's how the data. Remember when Mark was doing his chart? Everybody knows. So now you got this data going up and down. Communicate. The press is your friend now, right? The journalists are your friend. Share everything with them. Everything with them. And if they have questions, those are gems, right? What do you mean by that? I bet I was just talking to Susan about your business model. That's probably a little difficult for a lot of people to understand. That just means I got to figure out how to get everybody on board and treat every stakeholder with the respect so that everybody knows that plan. Now the journalists are all writing it. Your employees read about it in the paper. Okay? You got an exciting job. It's the coolest job in the world. And again, you got to respect everybody so much that if they have a question about it, and if you're using terms that they can't understand, then use terms that they can understand. I like today because I understand what revenue is. I understand profits. I also suggested the margins are really good things to look at, and cash flow. I can get that. When you start getting into all of these other things that we try to share with everybody. Yes.
Hey, hello. My name's Alan Levine. I'm the CEO of Mountain States Health Alliance in Johnson City, Tennessee.
Very good.
Listen, you were the CEO, if I'm not mistaken, of Ford during during a really difficult time for the auto industry when two of the big three took substantial government assistance.
Yes. I was there.
You were the one that didn't take the money.
That's true.
What? Yeah. Unfortunately, in our business, we don't get to say we don't want the government's money. We all rely very heavily on it. But can you just talk to us really quick about what that was like during that 2007 to 2010 time period? Just going to work knowing what was happening with the economy and just in your world as a CEO, what was that like?
Wow. It's unbelievable. Our country was this far from being in a depression that was worse than 1929. It's unbelievable how close we were. I'm going to answer your question, but I want to make just a comment first about a comment you made in your introduction about working together with the government. We have to work together with the government. It's not always the easiest thing to do or the nicest thing to do, but this public-private partnership, we have got to figure this out together. It's all about working together. And it's so easy, and I'm at Boeing and at Ford, I was always tempted, oh God, I had enough of that. CAFE rules on fuel efficiency. It's the most market-distorting policy in the history of mankind. And we're still importing more of our oil from people who don't believe in us. Just crazy stuff, crazy policies. But we all got to switch over to we're going to do whatever it takes to keep working to try to get to solutions that make sense, especially with what you're doing. So as hard as it is, we have got to keep working together. That's my thought about that. And I've dedicated a large portion of my life working with the government and the regulators to try to improve it. Okay, now, to your direct question. Okay, so this is GM and Chrysler. And we find out that GM is completely bankrupt. And they cannot get $1 in debtor in possession financing. They are bankrupt. And in normal circumstances, if you're bankrupt, you have told the world and yourself you have no idea what you're in business for. And the assets ought to be given to somebody else, right? Right? I mean, it's America. We believe this, right? Is this as enthusiastic as you're going to get about this? Because that's how we grow. That's how the market needs to decide. The market is the only one that should be allocating precious resources. And they do it with their purchase decision. And it's going to be okay. You got to trust the market because it's the market's us. And so they're going to go back and talk to the government and tell them this situation. And it's getting worse and worse with the economy. And I shared with you that we're 15 to 18% of the U.S. GDP. And if GM and Chrysler would have gone into free fall, they would have taken all of the suppliers, all the technology companies, and maybe even us with them, and we'd wiped out 30% of the economy right away. And Ben Bernanke and Paulson and no one thought we could survive, and which is why two presidents decided to help GM. I didn't think they were going to take them through bankruptcy and jam down the bondholders and the shareholders and everybody else and get rid of their debt. But we decided the hardest decision I've ever made is to go testify on their behalf. So there's hearings that you watched me. So there's GM, Chrysler, and me. And then the first hearing is the president of the UAW, the union. And so they're explaining what the situation is. They're bankrupt. They're going to go into bankruptcy pretty soon. They're running out of cash. And so they're asking the government for precious taxpayer money. And so on the second hearing, I was sitting in the same chair that Hank Paulson was in the day before, trying to explain to the congressmen and the senators where the $700 billion of TARP money went. Because they were giving it so fast to keep the banks liquid, to stop a run on the bank, that they weren't quite sure where it all was. And you didn't even have to ask for it. You're going to get it anyway, because they were trying to keep the place liquid. I'd never fault them for the approach. But I'm sitting in that same chair, and all of our leaders are sitting there, and they're terrified. I mean, as they should be, they're terrified. And then here we are, GM and Chrysler, asking for money on top of that. So in hindsight, I would do it again. I was doing it for the good of the United States, and I would do it again. One funny story about that, about the plane. So we fly back to Washington, D.C. for the first hearings. And so they found out about it, and they love to do this. So one of the senators, it's like a gladiator movie, because they're on levels like this, and you're in the pit. You know, and that table you see, and they have C-SPAN running right in front of you, and then you have all the camera people around, and they give you a little bottle of water, and you sip on it because you're going to be there for 8 hours, and you can't get to the bathroom anyway. And then the C-SPAN's looking at your face, and so the way it works is you get 5 minutes, because you've been subpoenaed to testify, to say what you want to say, and no one can interrupt you. Then after that, every senator and congressman can get 5 minutes to ask you questions. But they're not there at the same time. They don't have to be at the same time. So they just come in and going. So they ask you the same questions over and over again. And you watch the people that testify. If you start to get a little angry or twitchy, then they just eat you up. Because you can't do that. Because you can't do that. Because they're leading. And they're talking to themselves, or they're talking to the other side of the aisle, or they're talking to whoever. And so they found out that we flew there. All three of us flew there on our corporate jets. And so they found out about that. And so in their question, in the last 30 seconds, one of them finally says, "So, I hear you guys all flew here on your corporate jets, and you didn't even jet pool here. Why would you fly here on your corporate jets and ask for precious taxpayer money?" So they asked that of GM, and Rick said, "I'm really sorry. That wasn't best judgment. I won't do that again." And they talked to Bob Mardelli and Chrysler. I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't good. And then they turned around to me and they said, "So, Mr. Malloy, why did you fly here on your corporate jet to ask for precious taxpayer money?" So I said, "God, this is not good." So I said, "Senator, with all due respect, I'm not here asking for precious taxpayer money. I'm here to testify on behalf of my bankrupt competitors for the good of the United States and the world economy." And the senator says, "Just answer the question. Why did you fly here on your corporate jet?" Well, that's a different question now. So I got my integrity. So I kind of rubbed my chin again and said, "Senator, with all due respect, I'm an airplane guy, and that's why we invented airplanes, for long distance travel." Bam, bam. The other one that was like that was they do this a lot. In their 30 seconds, they'll say, "Okay, GM, if we give you this money, will you work for $1 a year?" "Yes, absolutely. I just need it really quickly. I'm running out of money." "Chrysler, yeah, I'll work for $1 a year. Just please give me the money." "Mr. Malloy, if we give this money, will you work for $1 a year?" So I said, "Senator, with all due respect, I'm not here asking for precious taxpayer money. I'm here to testify on behalf of my bankrupt competitors for the good of the United States and the world economy. Just answer the question, Mr. Malloy. Will you work for $1 a year?" That's a different question now. So I rubbed my chin very thoughtfully and said, "Senator, I'm okay where I am." See, you gotta enjoy that fun part because it is so serious. And it was such a serious time. And as I pointed out, or as I said, if I had to do it again, I'd make the same decision because it was the right thing to do for the country. And sometimes it's not, not like the way it should happen, but sometimes this is the right thing to do.
Another question?
I can't see you. Where are you?
Way over here on the,
Okay, very good. There you are.
yeah, I'm Napoleon Knight from the Carle Health System in Illinois.
Fantastic.
Another financially challenged entity. I've heard that the cost of healthcare adds a little bit to the cost of automobile manufacturing. So my question is, are the changes that you see coming in healthcare going to help your industry get where they need to go?
I had a little bit of a preview about what Susan's going to share with you tomorrow about the future, and I thought it was very exciting. And so I think I'll leave, that's my answer for right now, but having said that, what we did was so dramatic that the reason that we're even alive, to your point, is that we took action on the retiree health care. And we put it all in Aviva, we funded it, we dealt with the health care and with the pension, and it's turned out great, and everybody still has it, and it's funded, and it was funded by Ford stock. Because if we wouldn't have dealt with the cost of our health care and our obligations for the pension, Ford would have been gone too. And this is not like a Ford issue. This is like every state is in the same situation in the United States with respect to their pensions and their health care. So one reason that I wanted to come when you invited me is just to tell you, from my point of view, as a citizen and a Boeing and a Ford, that what you're doing is really, really important. And doing it together with everybody is the only way. And I think you're going to enjoy Susan's remarks tomorrow. We also had a neat conversation is that I don't get a chance to see you guys. I have all these, what do we call them, brokers? I see all these people show up to tell me what you think. And so we got to change that around too, because we are highly motivated to change both the quality and the cost. I think one of the neatest things is building this awareness where we're all participating and helping take care of our health. It's just so right. It's so right, no matter what. One last question, because I'm the last thing between you and your evening.
Good evening. I'm Craig Grant with Norton Healthcare over here
Okay, there you are.
in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm
Yes.
curious, as you transform forward, what percentage turnover did you have, either in ranks or in management? I'm betting not very much, but I'm curious to hear.
That's a great question. So there are remember there are 3 or 4 people that reported to Bill at the time, and then I think I ended up with 16 on the team, the businesses and the skill teams. And if you leave out the retirements, 80% of that team are still there, and 60% are in a different position on the team and playing to their strengths. Because Ford got kind of caught up in the Japanese model of, you can move everybody around, and the propulsion engineer could be HR next week, and communications could take over. It's like crazy stuff. You want professionals at every position, the best that you can get. You want to nurture them across the world, and then every once in a while you'll have a few that you're moving into general management, but you want professionals at every position. Only two or three left because this is too hard for them, because sometimes you just can't do this. And my thought about that always has been over the years, it's okay. I can remember at Boeing and at Ford, we'd be talking about this, and some great leaders would say, Alan, are you really asking us, or your expectation is that we need to remove fear and intimidation from our management toolbox? I said, yep. Well, I don't know whether I can do that. That's why I'm here. And I'm dying, I've done a great job for the company, but that's my style. And it's worked fine. I said, well, you've had a great career, but it's probably not going to work out so well going forward. And it's okay. It's my favorite thing. It's okay. Because you're going to be happier if you move on, and we're going to be a lot happier if you really can't agree to these expected behaviors. And very few times have people chosen not to move into the light and operate this way, because it's just so much neater and it's just so much more fun. Also, most of the leaders, the vast majority, have been offered CEO positions of other companies, because what people really want today is they want leaders that also know how to work together big time through doing big things like you're doing. Can I tell you one last story before you leave about working together? There's one more logo that I would put on my chart, and it would be the Mullally family. I just wanted to share this with you because this works for everything. So we would have a business plan review. We called it a family meeting every Sunday. And Nikki and I have been married for 45 years, and we have 5 children. And when you have 5 children, you need to have a reliable process for managing the place. And you have to agree on the expected behaviors, or it can get really nasty. So we come back from church on Sunday morning, and then the first agenda item is that everybody would go around the house after a week and gather all their stuff up and get it back in their cubbies and back in their rooms, so the place looked like a bomb went off. So that'd be the first agenda item. The next agenda item is they go back to their room and get all their laundry and bring it down to the laundry room, and we'd wash all the clothes, and then they would bring the laundry down to the kitchen table, and then we'd sort the laundry, especially the socks. Now, for all of you know this, if you have multiple people in the family, you can't sort the socks, or it's going to take you a long time, or you're going to come up with very exotic ways of doing it to try to figure out whose socks they are. And you have 5 kids, you can't figure out who the socks are. So are you going to do it, or are you going to have, is the team going to do it? So they sort the socks and the laundry, they take it back to the room. The next agenda item is they bring their schedule down. And they have from the time they're in kindergarten, they'd have a loose, those spiral notebooks with their schedule, and we go around the room, and everybody would then plan their schedule. Do you need cheerleading support? Do you need a ride? Do you need taxi cab service, parent-teacher conference, whatever? And I would do the very same thing and take it back to my assistant, and we just build it into our schedule. So where's Alan at 2 o'clock? Well, he's at a parent-teacher conference, or he's at the soccer game or whatever. So we get the schedule all done, and then the best one was that the next agenda item was that if you're going to do anything in your life that's going to affect the family, you need to tell us ahead of time. This worked out to be golden. Can't tell you not to do it, and when it rains, the ground gets wet, and so there are consequences. But we're a family, so if you're going to do something that's going to affect all of us, let us know. So that worked out great. And then as they got older, every time we're together, we just laugh and laugh and laugh, and they're always leaning on me about these family meetings. And so one time I said, so why did you keep coming to the family meeting if they were so awful? And they said, well, do you remember what the last agenda item was, Dad? And I said, no, I don't. I said, you passed out the allowances. We had to come to the family meeting. Okay, now, Susan, thanks a lot for inviting me, and I wish you guys the very best. What you're doing is so, so important, and I'm with you every step of the way, and thank you very much for your leadership, okay?
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate your insights on how to manage in a collaborative way. We also appreciate your insights on how to manage a family.
Very good.
So we appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Alan. Good luck.
Another round of applause for Alan. Thanks, Alan. Thank you all for being here. Don't forget, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. we have our breakouts on those areas of cost and reduction and quality improvement. And then Susan talks at 8:30 on her speech around how we're going to drive improvements in healthcare. Thanks, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Fine, Premier Board Member, President and CEO of Banner Health.
Employer-sponsored healthcare coverage hasn't broken the bank. In fact, across the board, consumers are taking a more active role in managing their wellness and keeping the cost of their care down. But there is another side of the coin. Healthcare spending grew faster in 2015 than in any year since the Great Recession. The exchanges have been plagued with technology failures and lower than expected enrollment. Deductibles and premiums, they're going way up. Did you know they're rising 7 times faster than wages? And everyone seems to be buying everything they can get their hands on. Hospital consolidation is at a 20-year high. And now we're going to be down to 3 national payers. You know, I've heard Bernie Sanders talk a lot about a single payer, but I don't think that's exactly what he had in mind. So the start of a new year is a great time to reflect, to think about where we've come from, and to think about where we're going. So as we set our resolutions for ourselves and for the industry, I'd like for us to think beyond this year and think about what we're going to try to accomplish in the next decade. And that requires that we do some predictive work, right? We have to try to figure out what we think's happening. From my vantage point, there are 4 key trends that we have to be on top of as we go forward into the next decade. So I want you to remember these when you leave today. 1, macronomics. 2, pharma crisis. 3, value contracts. And 4, integration nation. I'm going to explain what I mean by these 4, and I want to talk about the stakes that we have to put into the ground today in order to actually have the future we want to see in 10 years. As most of you know, last year the federal government replaced the old sustainable growth formula. That was the way physicians were paid. It's now called MACRA with the new law. So we're entering a new era, one that is shaped by a phenomenon that I call macronomics. MACRA gives physicians the same choice that hospitals got with the Affordable Care Act. You can stay in fee-for-service, and you can be subjected to payments that are with the capital needed to create truly a learning healthcare system. With more aligned partnerships across the continuum and the community, they could bring exceptional healthcare and exceptional value to expanded communities of patients. So the systems in this room, you're working to ensure, I think, that that last option is selected. Because that alignment, providers together with providers, is going to yield the largest benefit to patients. I think a few things are working to our advantage here. First, health systems have a head start. Value-based payments are not anything new to anyone in this room. You've been living it since 2010. Physicians, meanwhile, are at the beginning of the value journey. And it's going to require a big shift. As one physician in our alliance rightfully pointed out, doctors aren't so used to big teams. In medical school, it's their individual performance. In residency, some of the same thing. Many make life or death decisions every day, and those decisions are not made by committees. The way he put it, doctors feel like they've been playing golf their entire careers, and now they're being asked to switch to football. And speaking of football, go Panthers! There's the Panther growl. But it's true, isn't it? After a career of going at it alone, suddenly the physician's survival depends on the success of a whole team. So my challenge to healthcare systems is this: be the best possible teammates that you can be for physicians and lots of other clinicians. Because as the difficulty and the expense of going it alone under MACRA is realized, building the care models, buying the information technology, building the facilities, health systems can bring real value to the table. MACRA also addresses the key problem we've always faced in hospital, health system, physician partnerships, and that is the misaligned incentives. While health systems have been moving forward with value-based payments, physicians have had to continue to live in largely a fee-for-service world. So let's be candid without passing judgment. Misalignments in areas as fundamental as how people are paid, it fragments the care efforts, right? It breeds some mistrust between the clinical community and the administrative folks. That's a problem for patients, and it's a problem that MACRA is attempting to solve. Now everyone will be working with the same set of measures, and all will be incented by savings, by value, by clinical outcomes instead of volume. MACRA also stands to help providers reach greater scale, and with it, improved efficiency and improved outcomes. It's really hard to see an ROI when you're dealing with 5,000 beneficiaries in an ACO. But once you're dealing with 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 beneficiaries, the cost of the investment gets spread across a much wider population. And so that equation changes. And that's good news. The health systems and physicians are insulated in a way from some of the rest of the industry that's being swept up in consolidation. So as we think about New Year's resolution, here's our first one. Let's resolve that health systems in this alliance will be the ones that physicians turn to in this uncertain time, and let's resolve to welcome them into the health system folds and work together to transform healthcare from the inside. Resolution number one. We don't have any time to waste. By the end of March, before MACRA even kicks in, physicians who don't report quality measures face a 2% Medicare payment cut. That provides an opportunity to start those conversations or continue those conversations now, and to demonstrate the value that health systems can bring when they're all united behind a common goal of this continuous performance improvement for health systems, for providers, most importantly for patients. The next trend I want to talk about is the pharma crisis. It's ripping through our industry. It's driving the prices of life-saving drugs sky high. Drug manufacturers have gotten a lot of bad press this year, and I'm not talking about El Chapo and Sean Penn. Overall drug prices increased by 12.2% last year. That's the highest rate of increase in a decade. You've all heard about touring pharmaceuticals, which came under fire last year for taking a life-saving drug and jacking up the price 5,000% overnight. Valiant Pharmaceuticals, same thing. I don't think this is news to any of you. 98% of our health system CEOs would name drug costs as one of their top 3 challenges for the next decade. Obviously, not every drug is overpriced, and not every manufacturer is looking to cart away money by the wheelbarrows. But it's clear that we need greater competition to curb the runaway prices. Take generic drugs. More than 3,500 generic drugs doubled in price. These are generic drugs. Doubled in price from 2008 to 2015, and about 400 of those increased over 1,000%. When the market's working, generics are typically 80 to 85% less expensive than the brand. But price spikes meant that our members, you paid over $500 million more for off-contract generics in the last year. So what's going on here? Part of the problem goes back to the 2008 counterfeit heparin scandal. And after all the scrutiny, congressional hearings, the FDA started to aggressively step up their inspections, closing down manufacturers, closing down raw material suppliers who were violating quality standards. And when they implemented the tougher regulations for approvals, the backlog for generic drug applications ballooned to 4,000. And then you add in a surge of supplier consolidation, manufacturer consolidation. And the result is that in many generic categories, just one or two companies provide the entire country's supply. And that gives them unchecked pricing power. In the last few months, we've heard calls from new government agents talking about implementing policies. We've heard it from presidential candidates as well, to combat these spikes in price. But I want to be clear, price controls, which is what they're talking about, would be a short-sighted and a knee-jerk reaction, and ultimately those controls would create an even greater chill on the market. For new entrants who already face lots of barriers and high compliance risk to getting into the business. And allowing Medicare to negotiate pricing, we all know this, right? It's kind of just a euphemism for price controls. We're not naive about that anymore. In theory, Medicare negotiates pricing with health systems today, right? But with reimbursements that are now 9% lower than your actual cost, it's not working out so well. So the real answer to the pharma problem is more competition. The one thing the government can do is fix the FDA's approval process. Right now, how long do you think it takes to get approval for a generic drug? On average, 42 months. And worse, the FDA won't prioritize drugs that could address these non-competitive markets. I know of two companies that each filed an application to become a competitive market entrant, and they are both still waiting for approval 3 years later. One of them actually got a letter from the FDA last month saying, we're going to fast track your application. Fast track after 3 years. They must have a different definition of fast. I could be an Olympic speed skater, I guess. In the short term, though, we need to advocate for legislation that would give the FDA the authority to push approvals to the front of the line when it's clear that the drug in question would fix a market that has too few players, or if they could provide an alternative to a drug that was suffering from shortage. Think about it. Sovaldi was last year's poster child for outrageous prices. But as soon as AbbVie and Merck announced hepatitis C drugs of their own, the price came down by 46%. Competition works, and the government should focus on allowing more competitors to enter the market. From there, then, we could lean on our collective purchasing power to foster healthy competition. We've been putting manufacturers through a competitive head-to-head bidding process for a long time now. Price increases in our own generic drug portfolio when they're on contract they've grown at just 1.8% over the last year and for the last 5 years, well below the 12%, well below healthcare and general inflation. And we aren't just negotiating better deals, we're also working to maintain supply levels among the manufacturers we partner with. And now we have the rise of precision medicine. And so you can all expect to see, and we expect to see, a lot more high-priced drugs entering the market. So just hoping for the best isn't an option here. Independently led specialty pharmacies, insurance company-led PBMs and specialty pharmacies, those aren't the answer. I think we need to act on this now more than ever. So our second New Year's resolution for controlling the pharma crisis is that over the next decade, we want to position ourselves, the providers in this room, the providers across the country, as the competitive force that's going to bring reason back to this market. So what does that mean? It means we can't rely on others. We have an opportunity to rebalance the power dynamic so that the systems of providers can control more segments of this pharma vertical, and you can exert more downward pressure on price. A supply chain organization, a GPO alone, can only go so far. But what if our alliance with our supply chain organization, coupled with a specialty pharmacy, could reach directly to consumers? As a 3,600 network of hospitals, what if we established a provider-led PBM that can collectively negotiate pricing and rebate structures? What if we, as providers, built effective formularies together with hundreds of thousands of clinicians, acute and ambulatory, that can determine what's on and off the formulary? Now that's powerful. And that could deliver massive savings and clearly greater transparency around cost. So for the long term, let's resolve right now to build the cross-continuum demand aggregators and the infrastructure that we can leverage to bring new competitors to the market, so we can minimize that risk of market entry. If new competitors think they have the premier alliance as a channel, that will ensure a predictable spend for them. And let's resolve that health systems and providers will shape the markets and the rules by which manufacturers operate, as opposed to the other way around. So that brings me to the next trend I want to talk about, the rise of value contracts or value-based contracting. As more of us engage in different payment models, it's imperative that we work together, spreading the risk, controlling the cost, providing value to patients. We want the new models to be Sovaldi-proof, everyone to have skin in the game, so no one will be stuck holding the bill for the next big drug or device all by themselves. Over the next decade, all parts of the chain are going to be looking at us, you, health providers, and they're going to be asking us to take risks in a different way. If you're in an alternative payment model, you're taking on risk for overall costs and overall health outcomes. And ambulatory providers are joining you. Likewise, insurers are assuming risk for total cost of care, but guess what? They're passing that risk right back to you. And as consumerism rises in the marketplace, we're also seeing increasing demands by consumers for value-based benefit plan design. They want preventive care and maintenance medications to be free. It also rewards those who reach certain health goals, like lowering their BMI or blood pressure, giving them lower deductibles or premiums. All of this requires an upfront investment, but over the long term, it yields savings and it yields better outcomes. But so far, been here 12 years, Manufacturers have been relatively immune to any of this risk-based contracting, and that's got to change. So as we all move closer to fixed global budgets, we can't afford to see the huge variation in supply prices that we have to live with today. The ranges, 53% variation in the price of the same cardiac devices, 78% variation in spine, no thank you. Higher prices have to mean proven better outcomes. So to determine effectiveness, providers are arming themselves with real-world data. And we're going to be able to prove or disprove the truth behind the claims. As an alliance, we can take that data a step further. It's time to ask our manufacturers, what risk are you willing to assume? If you're a supplier that believes your product reduces readmissions, will you agree to pay the penalty, the payment penalty, if that promise doesn't hold true? If you believe that your device's higher price tag today leads to a lower total cost tomorrow, are you willing to test that in the real world and adjust your price based on the findings? So like any value-based contract, these moves are good for cutting long-term costs. They get everybody focused on the same goal, which is keeping patients healthy and keeping costs low at the same time. And so I like to say there's no I in contract. Over the next decade, we have to determine the metrics that will fairly evaluate product performance. And we need a collective data warehouse providing consistent and credible data on costs, on outcomes, for drugs, for devices, for services, you name it. So we can initiate contracts and we can truly compare effectiveness over the long term. It's hard to think of a better use of our data assets than that. So here's the third New Year's resolution. Over the next decade, let's make a move to value-based contracts. Let's share data with each other. Let's agree that we will buy only the products that can prove their value. And when it comes to provider-owned data, we have the largest repository of patient information in the nation. But our goal, a goal as big as this, calls for even more inputs from even more providers, acute and ambulatory. Fortunately, many of you already do this, but we really need all of you to move this trend. As a data hub, Premier is far more trusted than others who don't have the partnerships, who don't have the aligned business interests that we have with you and your aligned business interest with physicians. We've been acquiring companies like CE City to improve our ability to connect the data dots across the whole continuum. Longer term, we have to keep investing capital to expand our capacity to analyze countless and distributed data points all in real time. 10 years from now, we want to have a complete picture of the high-cost therapies and interventions, the types of people getting them, the cost of an episode of care, and the longitudinal outcomes. And we want to pay for the ultimate value that's delivered, not the arbitrary price based on an analysis that none of us understand. So ultimately, our ability to run assessments of comparative effectiveness and in turn, value-based contracts comes down to what our information technology systems allow. And that leads me to my last and fourth trend that demands real focus over the next decade. I like to call it Integration Nation. Our ability to manage integrated, holistic care delivery and the data you need to do that. And our patients are going to demand this pretty soon. One of my grandsons, my 3-year-old grandson, reminds me of this all the time. Is he up there? Is he cute? Really cute. She needs to cut his hair, though, don't you think? He can take my son's iPhone. He's 3. He can take my son's iPhone, he can enter the passcode, he can open it up, look at his options, and pick and choose the games that he wants to play or the Mickey Mouse videos that he wants to watch. So we are part of a generation that's learning its emojis alongside its ABCs. A generation that is more likely to learn to code than to learn cursive. Did you know they don't teach cursive anymore? We live at a time in which the entirety of human knowledge is accessible to us virtually within seconds. We expect that kind of accessibility across every aspect of our lives. Now contrast that with health IT. You can share a photo with anyone in the world using Instagram. So why is it so hard to send x-rays to multiple providers and to the patient? You can log your daily calories in seconds with your Fitbit. Why does it take so long to manually document quality measures? HIT apps rarely work together effectively and are almost never housed on a single device. The technology is so far behind that instead of buying your movie tickets on Fandango, you're renting a VHS from Blockbuster. And instead of getting an Uber, you're out in the rain hailing a cab. And instead of open table, you're hunting for your own food. So you get my point. We are suffering from a misaligned public policy, flawed design in technical capabilities, and a real inability to integrate data into the workflow. And we're having continued issues with interoperability across settings and platforms. But you've already sunk millions and billions of money into your IT. You can't rip it all down and start over again. And you might not even have truly functional alternatives to replace it with. But let me paint a picture of what that could look like and what our goals look like for the next 10 years. Imagine an app showing your system's key performance drivers in real time. Imagine monitoring transparent quality and patient experience metrics while patients are receiving care, not having to jump to a different system for regulatory reporting needs. Imagine communicating seamlessly with all of your clinical and community partners, folks both in your network and outside of your network. Imagine a clinically integrated supply chain that enables purchasing decisions based on quality and comparative effectiveness, and a system that alerts you when you're getting ready to buy a suboptimal product. Imagine a world where precision medicine allows us to turn a once incurable prognosis into a manageable chronic condition. If we create the right incentives for interoperability across disparate technologies, and we make emerging interoperability standards the norm, and if every HIT vendor in the market has to embrace this new open paradigm, I'm confident that we could move from our imagination to a reality. It's going to require significant investment on our end, but it's an investment we have to make. And as we move into all these alternative shared savings and bundling, dissatisfaction with the status quo of HIT is going to reach a fever pitch. Effective, interoperable apps will soon be a prerequisite for success in this industry. Policies like MACRA are rolling out whether we're ready or not. But if we go too fast on the alternative payment front and too slow on the technology front, we really risk being torn apart. Our alliance has been driving towards interoperability for some time. Promising news is that Congress is considering legislation that would create a rating system for technology vendors. Think of it as the Yelp of EMRs, ranking each vendor on usability, interoperability, and security. This move could go a long way towards incenting vendors to make major improvements to their systems. Looking beyond Congress, the administration has made healthcare interoperability a #1 priority. So our fourth New Year's resolution is to make the Premier Alliance and our members the leader in interoperability execution. 10 years from now, we want to be known as the first to recognize the need for integrated data, the first to build a technology platform that can accommodate all those data assets, the first to embed deep analytics into your workflow, the first to layer on top of that integrated applications. And to get there this year, so stepping back from 10 years from now, this year, we have to exert as much pressure as we possibly can to turn what today are walled-off gardens of HIT into tomorrow's open commons. We have to push for legislative and regulatory action to ensure operability. And we can take out an insurance policy here by embracing some standards that are out there. Have you ever heard of FHIR? If you haven't heard of FHIR, you need to. It stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. It's an emerging standard with the intent of gathering and connecting data from across disparate systems. It's garnering a lot of interest. And whether EHR vendors like it or not, it presents an opportunity to speed the road to interoperability and cut your IT costs. They've disseminated it to everybody, free. So let's get behind it. Let's push it. Let's demand it of our vendors. We've talked a lot about policies and payment reforms and other forces that are shaping our industry. But before we wrap up, there's a very important last point I want to make. Because when we talk about healthcare trends, sometimes we get so bogged down in the details and the complexity that we risk forgetting the big picture. So these changes aren't an end in and of themselves. They're a means to the really important end, incenting the best care at the best value for all of our patients. When we talk about challenges facing the industry, we're really talking about the people who are entrusting their lives, their families' lives, loved ones with us. We're talking about how to better serve our communities, the people who are relying on us in the long term to help them live their fullest, healthiest, most fulfilling lives. And you've heard me say this before, this is not business, this is personal. And healthcare systems live this in their communities. We've talked a lot about how to ensure that this change starts from the inside with health systems and providers. And many of you have already taken this up. You're starting with your own employees and your own provider-sponsored health plans. You recognize the irony in the fact that the healthcare industry has one of the unhealthiest worker populations. So it makes sense to start with your own. And we all ought to focus in 2016 on how we drive this change with our own. I was so surprised last year with Premier's employee base. We've been working with them on the idea of health savings accounts. And when we first initiated the idea, we had 10 or 11% uptake. Last year, we spent time really talking to them about how they would make choices around their healthcare decisions. And we showed them the economic model of economic decisions in healthcare and economic decisions for funding your long-term retirement. And it creates a different dynamic when people are fully knowledgeable. Our HSA participation this year jumped to 66%. So if we don't believe consumers want to understand this and want to figure out how to manage their life and their health in the long term, we're kidding ourselves. So I think 2016 is a year that we can really help our own employees get ready for what are these fundamental changes. Health systems across our alliance can model a smarter system for their own employees and for other employers, one where employees reap the benefit of value-based contracts, a more cost-controlled pharmaceutical environment, wider access to information, and greater opportunities to engage with the healthcare system. Between your employees' experiences, your patients' experiences, your deep understanding what patients need, what they care about, how to reach them, we will know as an alliance better than anyone else what works and what we need to do to deliver it so that others can see the future. Health systems need to be the future. The trends I'm discussing don't just predict our future for the next 10 years, they represent action items for our health systems. So when you leave today, remember them for the next decade. We have to understand and change for macronomics. We have to solve the pharma crisis together from a provider perspective. We have to get value contracts across the whole system, and we have to be an integrated nation of data and connectivity. The good news is no one is better positioned than this alliance and you to turn these resolutions into reality. You co-own and you've co-innovated a truly united, innovative force. It's unlike anything in our industry. No one else in healthcare has our assets, has our visibility collectively, has your brain power collectively, has our scale. And that's why I think the healthcare industry is looking to us together to lead the way. With your great work and with your inventive thinking, with our premier platforms and technology and intelligence and collaboration, we can create the solutions that we all need. We can invent the future together. And I think that's a resolution worth keeping. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Susan. We appreciate your thoughts on the emerging healthcare trends, and we also appreciate your thoughts on some very unique New Year's resolutions. So now it's time for our concurrent sessions. So go ahead and look at your conference guides to determine which ones that you'd like to attend. There'll be boxed lunches after that. And then we're going to meet back here at 7 o'clock for a reception, and then dinner in here at 7:30 for our awards dinner. So enjoy your day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen.
So we get the schedule all done, and then the best one was that the next agenda item was that if you're going to do anything in your life that's going to affect the family, you need to tell us ahead of time. This worked out to be golden. Can't tell you not to do it, and you know when it rains, the ground gets wet, and so there are consequences. But we're a family, so if you're going to do something that's going to affect all of us, let us know. So that worked out great. And then as they got older, every time we're together, we just laugh and laugh and laugh. And they're always leaning on me about these family meetings. And so one time I said, so why did you keep coming to the family meeting if they were so awful? And they said, well, do you remember what the last agenda item was, Dad? And I said, no, I don't. I said, you passed out the allowances. We had to come to the family meeting. Okay, now, Susan, thanks a lot for inviting me, and I wish you guys the very best. What you're doing is so, so important, and I'm with you every step of the way, and thank you very much for your leadership, okay?
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate your... Thank you. Appreciate your insights on how to manage in a collaborative way. We also appreciate your insights on how to manage a family.
Very good.
So we appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Alan. Good luck.
Another round of applause for Alan. Thanks, Alan. Thank you all for being here. Don't forget, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. we have our breakouts on those areas of cost and reduction and quality improvement. And then Susan talks at 8:30 on her speech around how we're going to drive improvements in healthcare. Thanks, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program is about to begin. Please take your seats.
Coming, but I also do want to call out all those folks that have made the extra effort to come when all the weather and affected travel and airports and those kinds of things. So I do really want to call you out and say thank you for fighting through all that and being with us. We do have a great agenda this week. We've got a whole bunch of breakout sessions talking about things on population health, cost reductions, how to get after that high-cost pharmacy, and how do you appropriately utilize drugs and those kinds of things. So you'll be seeing that spread throughout the week. As a matter of fact, tomorrow morning, we have 4 areas that I think will be very interesting to all of you. And so I'd love for you to take advantage of those programs. And again, those are pharmacy costs and shortages, so how do you deal with those? Managing physician performance, focus on total value care, and how can you most effectively do that? And then the idea of balancing cost and quality. So with that, let's get on to the speaker, and Alan Mulally. So Alan is going to talk tonight about all of his experience in running major corporations. So Alan was the CEO most recently of the Ford Motor Company and is currently a member of its board, where he led Ford's transformation into one of the world's leading automotive companies. Prior to joining Ford, Alan served in a number of executive roles at Boeing, including president of its commercial aircraft division. Throughout his career, he has been recognized for his industry leadership. He was named number 3 on Fortune's World Greatest Leaders list, one of the 30 world's best CEOs by Barron's, one of the world's most admired people by Time Magazine, and now I'd like to introduce the Chief Executive of the Year by Chief Executive Magazine, Alan Mulally. Thank you. Have fun.
How are you? Good? Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I have so much respect for what you all are doing together to improve the quality and the productivity of healthcare in the United States. And I had a chance to listen to Susan and the team earlier give a status report, and it's very impressive what you're doing together. The Premier Alliance asked me to join you and share my experiences, my thoughts, especially on collaboration. And I'm happy to do that. And the way I thought it might be good is I'll give you a summary of my experiences at Boeing and also at Ford, and then spend a lot of time on the Q&A, because a lot of you know a lot about the Boeing story worldwide and also the Ford transformation. And the Q&A is always really fun because the questions are so fantastic. I'll answer any question you would like. I'm retired now. There's no press. This is fantastic. And so anything that you want to know about, just ask me. For example, if you want to know how to testify effectively in Congress on behalf of your bankrupt competitors, the most important thing is to fly there on your corporate jet. It's the most important thing. So whatever you'd like to know about, I'll be glad to share. Okay, so I had the honor to serve at Boeing for 37 years, and I was on the design team for every Boeing airplane: the 707, the 727, the 737, the 747, the 757, the 767.
I was the chief engineer and the director of engineering and the program manager for the 777, which you are all flying all around the world today, and also the launch of the 787. And on all of these Boeing airplanes, it's so important that you come together around a compelling vision for what that plane is, whether it's nonstop, point to point, whether it's polar routes, the fuel efficiency, the capability of the vehicle, and that everybody knows what that vision is. It's also really important that, that everybody knows what the strategy is for achieving it. The materials, the aerodynamics, the integration of the airplane, the satellite navigation, everything about it, they need to know every element of the plan and the strategy to achieve it. And also, you need a relentless implementation plan. And that's where the business plan review that everybody knows about comes from, where every Thursday, everybody around the world is all networked in to understand where we are on the strategy and the plan, what are the areas that need special attention, including color coding it so everybody can get it really fast. When you're designing a commercial airplane has around 4 million parts. And there are literally about 1.5 million people working on the airplane when you're designing a brand new airplane. So it's just so important that you have a culture where not only the people know the plan and what the status is, but they're all helping each other with a can-do, find-a-way attitude. And it's got to be a culture where everybody it's okay to share. It's got to be safe. It's got to be expected that everybody's going to share because you're breaking wings and blowing up engines. Remember, this is the safest vehicles in the world. But when you create a new one, you're really checking them out. And so it's really important that you have a safe and as well as an accountable management system. So through all of that, I have one overhead projection to show you what I've learned. And if we can display it, I'm not sure where they're going to display it. Is it displayed? Can you see it? Okay. Oh, we got one down here too. Okay, so if I had to summarize, which is what I was asked, what I think about collaboration and lots of talented people working together, it would be on this slide. So clearly, believing in people is really, really important because it's going to be the people and the talented people that work individually and as a team. Everyone has to be included on the team. Same way when you run a corporation, everybody has to be there. They can't understand what's going on by hearing it from hearsay or waiting for it to flow down. I'll tell you some more about that. We talked about the compelling vision, the comprehensive strategy, and then that relentless implementation every week. The performance goals got to be really clear, really clear. There can't be any ambiguity about the range of the airplane. If you're flying to Honolulu and you land short, that's a real not good. So everybody's got to be really clear about the performance goals. And there's got to be one plan. I know you've all have experience with this, but in any organization, there's always lots of plans. So creating clarity around the plan, over communicating the clarity, and also reinforcing the clarity is really, really important so that everybody knows how it's going. Facts and data, as we talked about, really, really important. If you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's red or yellow, then you can't manage a secret. So it's got to be accountable, but also very, very safe to be able to share how it is. The next one is something that I've noticed a lot of people struggle with because information is considered to be an asset sometimes by a lot of people. And the really successful organizations are the ones that really believe that everyone needs to know the plan, needs to know the status against the plan, and the areas that need special attention. And I don't know about you, but there are a lot of organizations where there are a few people that know certain things, but everybody doesn't know everything. And in this world of transparency and information is ubiquitous, everybody knows anyway. So it's really important that everybody does really know. Positive attitude, propose a plan, find a way attitude, it's just so important. These things only get done because you have the hearts and minds and all the talent of everybody participating. Respect is really important, listening to each other, seeking to understand before you seek to be understood, and also appreciating each other and good work. Emotional resilience, go right back up to the top. It's all about people working together because things are going to happen because you're creating these fantastic vehicles. And trust this process and just keep going around and around and around it. And of course, it is so much fun to design a commercial airplane. So everybody ought to be enjoying it, and we ought to be enjoying the journey of doing it, plus each other. So that's my presentation. That's all I've learned. Okay, now I'll tell you a little bit more. So I was then asked to serve as the president and the CEO of Boeing Commercial Airplanes. And what I really knew after all those years on the programs were these working together principles and practices. So I didn't make one change to these principles and practices as the CEO of Boeing. And they're all exactly the same. And the one really clear performance goal in business, as you know, is profitably growing for the good of all the stakeholders. And so that was a really important part that we clarified on the vision and the strategy. Also, then I was asked to integrate McDonnell Douglas Corporation and Rockwell with all of Boeing's defense and space assets at the end of the Cold War because we needed to rationalize all of our capability throughout the United States. And so I used the very same principles and practices because we had 3 of everything, fighters and bombers and satellites and launch vehicles and tankers. And so we used the very same principles and practices to bring these 3 fantastic companies together to create the nation's finest defense and space company. And things are going pretty well, and it was really fun. And I never thought I was going to leave Boeing. And I had one more airplane that I wanted to contribute to, and that was a replacement for the 737, which is the most popular airplane in the world. And when you look at all of the Boeing airplanes today, 75% of all the seats that are flying worldwide are on a Boeing airplane. So if it's not a Boeing, you shouldn't be going. And then I got a call from Bill Ford. And I kept thinking, Bill Ford, the great-grandson of Henry Ford? And as we all know, Henry Ford changed the world. 113-year-old company, committed to safe and efficient transportation. Just a fantastic contribution to economic development, energy independence and security, and environmental sustainability. And I knew I was in trouble as Bill was explaining the situation at Ford because I didn't say no right away. And I was just so interested in this fabulous global and American icon that I just wanted to learn everything I could about it. And the more that he shared with me, and Bill's just this fabulous person and leader, the more grim it became. And I still couldn't say no. And so I started doing my due diligence, and this is what I found. First of all, a 113-year-old company, tremendous technical base, continuous improvement, continuous innovation, and they had become a house of brands. So they had purchased Aston Martin, Jaguar, Land Rover, Volvo, Mazda, in addition to Ford. And because they couldn't figure out how to make money on Ford, so they thought, if we have all these brands, then maybe we can deliver, profitable growth for all the stakeholders. And you can imagine how complex that was. Also, Ford had become very regionalized, and Henry Ford set Ford up originally to operate in every country around the world in where we sold vehicles, because he wanted to be part of the economic fabric and provide great jobs and great careers. And he was so far ahead of his time, and he still is, because most of our competitors today are mercantilists.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Fine, Premier Board Member, President and CEO of Banner Health.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a great opening session with Alan Mulally, a special guy and clearly a demonstrated change agent. You know, he clearly made a very strong case for collaborative leadership and a collaborative leadership model, which really allows for a much more effectively driven transformation. And you know, if you think about that, that kind of applies to all of our communities too. We're an industry right now that is totally being reinvented. And being members of the Premier Alliance really allow us to work collaboratively to leverage our resources and improve the quality and reduce our costs more effectively, I think, than we can do our own. Our company has been part of Premier for a long time, and it's really an advantage to be part of an organization like this and call out of that organization the ability to have those improvements come back into our communities. Today and tomorrow, our speakers are going to offer you perspectives, they're going to share successes, provide lessons for all of us to take home and use immediately. And that's the purpose of an educational program like this. It's really not about just listening, it's listening and what can you take home and use in your own communities and help you to deal with what is an incredibly disruptive environment.